You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. What do stress and a traffic light have in common? Stay tuned for today's episode to find out. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore how stress shapes our daily lives and what it takes to shift out of it quickly. Our conversation highlights how simple practices can regulate the nervous system and restore a sense of calm even in the middle of chaos. Isabelle Tierney, MA, is a licensed therapist and founder of the Stress Reset, a proven method that helps individuals and businesses reduce stress in minutes, anytime, anywhere. As a celebrated international speaker and authority on stress and resilience, her work has transformed thousands of lives, unlocking greater well-being, productivity, and health. She's passionate about making stress relief simple, fast, and accessible so people can thrive in all areas of life. Let's meet Isabelle Tierney. Hi, Isabelle. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we'll be talking about, and I hate to say favorite things, but they are some of my favorite things, stress and burnout and everything that goes with it, because it's such an important topic. And I feel like we do still need to talk so much more about it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I don't think we know almost any human being, at least I don't in my life, that don't experience some sort of stress that's hurtful, right? That can be destructive. Talking about it more and understanding the science of it more and understanding how to get out of it is what I've dedicated my life to.
I can definitely understand that passion. So thanks for being here today. And for starters, Isabelle, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and maybe share with us the bits of your journey or the bits of your story that relate to what you do today? How did you come to do what you do today? And share with our listeners also what it is that you do today.
Yeah, so these days I call myself a stress regulation expert. And I love the word stress regulation versus stress management or stress reduction because I really teach people how to regulate their nervous system. And it's not about never going into the stress response, it's recognizing when we're in it and learning how to get out of it. So that's the work I do that we'll be talking about. I have a methodology that helps you recognize when you're in the stress response and shift out of it in minutes. And the reason I developed this methodology, so I grew up in Europe, I grew up in Switzerland with a lot of trauma. Think about my nervous system because of all the trauma I experienced was really dysregulated all the time. And the way that showed up as a young woman is with an eating disorder and an eating disorder that lasted more than 20 years. So I moved to the United States at 14, got married, have 2 master's degrees, had 3 kids. I had everything that anybody would want on the outside. But inside, I was this dysregulated, anxious, depressed, struggling with food, struggling with body image, and just pretty deeply disconnected from source, from myself. And did a lot of therapy, became a therapist, really wanted to help people with eating disorders, wanted to take my wound and make it now be my purpose. And when I moved to Boulder, Colorado, I started building a practice and I built it really fast. And I was seeing 8 clients a day, 5 days a week. And guess what happened? Because I was dealing with 3 young children, a husband, a household, and then the most severe cases of eating disorders, I burnt out. And 2 things happened. One, I was diagnosed with adrenal exhaustion, and which meant I couldn't function in my life. And I went through a divorce because, of course, my husband had none of me. By the time I got to my husband, there was none of me left. it was such a pivotal point in my life that I just resolved to do something about it, to see like how, especially as women, this was women I was seeing a lot, how can we have a successful life in which we're not either chronically stressed or burnt out? I brought together, curated all the clinical work I had done, the science I had researched, more neuroscience, biology, evolutionary biology, spirituality. And what came out is this simple method that helps us self regulate in minutes and that I now teach all over the world. And that really helps people remember that they're not their stress response and helps them remember who they are originally as human beings before they got kidnapped by stress. That's the meta story of that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Isabelle. And I feel like you are speaking into words a story that applies to so many of us, myself included, and I would wager many of the listeners as well, of experiences that we take for normal. We take them as our normal, and that's the way life just has to be. And at some point, there comes this awakening or a complete burnout, or the bottom falls out entirely, and we reassess and we reorient. And there comes this awakening where we go, wow, this isn't actually how life has to be. I love how you are bringing this together. You're bringing this together from different perspectives and you have your own methodology. Share with us a little bit what your methodology is about, if you can, without giving away the pieces that you don't want to give away publicly.
Oh, I don't mind giving away.
Share with us.
When I think of like Byron Katie's 4 questions, do you know Byron Katie? She gives it away, not to be dramatic, but this is the time in our planet in which if we can share all the tools we have, like why hold on to it? That's not a problem. What I want to say first is it's true that most people wait till crisis to say, I've had enough. And that is actually one of my missions, is why I want to go on podcasts like yours, because I want to say to people, you don't have to wait that long, because by then, the process of changing is so much harder. And we usually have lost something, maybe our health, maybe our relationships. By the way, my husband and I are back with each other, partly because of this work. So it's a great story, but you don't have to wait until your crisis. So hopefully my podcast is one of those times where you go, oh, there's something I can do. My methodology works with a very simple formula, which says awareness plus action equals transformation. All right. The awareness part, I teach people to recognize on the scale called the stress reset scale, 1 to 10, where am I at in terms of how stressed I am? And so the scale has the colors of a traffic light. So the red zone is the stress response, then there's yellow zone and green zone. We want to be green zone human beings. Green zone, you're open, you're spacious, you're balanced, you're peaceful, joyous, all the things we long to be, the best version of ourselves. The red zone is when we're in the stress response. It's not that we're the worst version of ourselves because we're bad human beings. It's because literally, and I know you know this, in the stress response, you can only be the best version of your worst version of yourself because you think you're in danger. So the only thing you can do is you can only fight, run away, or numb out, go into the freeze response. Part one of my formula is where am I at on that scale? Am I in the red zone, yellow zone, or green zone? Then the action part. If I'm in the red zone or the yellow zone, you practice 3 steps, and I'll tell you in a minute. But the part for you that for your listeners to get, each of those steps is very simple, but they're scientifically driven. So they're really important to know that. Step number one, think traffic light. Stop. If you notice you're in red or yellow, you stop. And then I say, don't believe anything you think, feel, or have the impulse to do, right? Remember when you're in the red zone, stressed out, and somebody has sent you an email and you just want to respond back, or your partner has said something really unkind to you, or somebody in traffic's cut you off. When we're in the stress response, the action we're going to take is often going to be way overreactive. Stop, don't believe anything. The way you're seeing the world is distorted. Step number two, slow down and breathe. Again, think yellow light. Once you start bringing your breath and consciously slowing it down, your nervous system starts going, oh, I'm safe. I'm not in danger. I can start regaining my composure. And then step number 3 is go. And we say go for a feel good habit. So go for a habit that settles your nervous system, but then really anchor it, milk it, because when you do that, your brain then starts actually recalling more positive memories than negative ones and starts regulating it itself to be more positively oriented than negatively oriented. Awareness, where are you at on the scale? What zone are you in? And then stop, slow down, breathe, and go. And I'm telling you, you will shift into the green zone in minutes, and then you won't send that email. You're not going to say the unkind thing to your partner. You are going to stay calm even off your drive home. And over time, this kind of self-regulation creates resilience, which is what we all want. Hopefully that was clear. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, beautifully explained. And thank you for sharing that. I do feel it is a time in our world where we should be putting our tools and approaches and methodologies out there for people to use, because we are, I feel, working on a sort of collective well-being as well at the same time. The way you explain your methodology, Isabel, it sounds deceptively simple and yet so powerful, because as you are speaking about the red zone, in my head, I am feeling what it feels like when I'm in the red zone. And I tell you, I wouldn't be able to do 50 steps that were necessary at that point. We need something simple because we are really either wired up or we're starting to shut down to some place where we're just frozen. So we need simple things that we can focus on, one or two or three, like you're saying, that we can just naturally and intuitively follow without having to add stuff that actually stresses us out more. Because if we have to remember a whole slew of things to do at that point, I don't think we could. So that's wonderful that you have narrowed this down into 3 simple things that people can follow. And I think this is really, if you recognize yourself in what Isabel was explaining, if you recognize yourself in either irritation or anger, or you have some big emotions that you're dealing with because something happened or somebody really hurt you and you are about to burn down the earth because of that, it is really simple to just think of 3 things that you do: stop, breathe, and then go. So very, very well put. And thank you for sharing that as well. I feel like this is doable for any of our listeners, doable for myself, anyone that you work with, and something that we can really put into practice in our own lives and in our own realities, no matter what they look like. So thank you for that.
I love what you're saying. The awareness that I still use the work, and I've been doing it for 10 years. You never stop learning, right? It seems really simple, but then you can go very deep in each piece of it. A really important piece that I think is vital is in the awareness part of the equation, the scale. I teach people a list of signals. So physical signals, emotional signals, mental signals, and relational signals, so that you can identify if you're heading towards the red zone, because the sooner we catch ourselves, the sooner it's going to be able to get out. The scale I told you has zone, but it's also 1 to 10. By the time you are the 1, you are in trouble because your thinking part of your brain has been kidnapped. Because in the stress response, you're supposed to act now, think later. If you're hiking and you know there's bears around the area and you hear rustling leaves and you see this brown shape, you're not going to sit and go, I wonder if it's a bear. Maybe it is. Let me wait around. It's like you're supposed to act now, run, and then figure out if it was a bear. So we have to remember that's the stop part. We are meant to act now, think later. Think about how many things you've done in your life where you've acted now and think later, eaten too much, drank too much, yelled too much. Identifying those signals is one of the primary things that I teach so that we can become more choiceful. Like I notice now when my jaw starts tightening, my biggest signal, and I'm going to do it right now, is how fast I'm speaking and how loud I'm speaking. So when I start heading towards the red zone, my voice gets loud and I start speaking fast. For some people, In the red zone, their voice shuts down. They go into the freeze response and they don't speak. Learning those signals, and I'm going to gift an ebook that actually has the methodology and a practice of how to set up habits to do that third step, the go step. You'll be able to see it, but become a ninja at recognizing when you're heading towards that red zone. And yes, the simplicity of it, Petra, it's like a 6-year-old can get it, and somebody who's done 30 years of self development can get it. And you've heard the book Self Development. I created this with simplicity because we can't think straight. If we're trying to remember 10 steps to do, we're not going to remember them. I used the universal traffic light symbol. So your brain never forgets once you learn this work and can use it in that moment. So thank you for noticing that. That's a big piece of its gift.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right, traffic light is something that pretty much anybody will recognize and understand what it means. So that's a really, really excellent way to position that. Now, I am wondering a little bit about, we just touched on that we usually wait until we are in some kind of crisis to actually work with ourselves and with our stress responses, which is not the healthiest thing to do, but a lot of people don't build that awareness until something actually really bad happens in their lives. Let's talk a little bit about what happens to us if we don't work on our stress responses or with our stress responses, or we don't do anything to regulate or mitigate or build resilience or capacity. What kind of things happen to us if we just have this ongoing chronic stress? And this could involve school, it could involve work, it could involve our relationships, our finances. Stress really is anywhere around us. It doesn't just have to be work stress. But what happens to us if we just live our lives in this stress bubble and we never actually do anything for ourselves?
I usually don't say this up front. I say, this work helps you become the best version of yourself. And I usually don't say this up front. This chronic stress response has you become the worst version of yourself, but it actually does. And it's not one of my big mottos is that it's not your fault who you become in the red zone, but it is your responsibility to change it. I was raised with a lot of shame. That was like the weapon that was used to try to manipulate me into change. I have a big passion around eliminating shame as a way to transform. And who we become in the red zone and what it creates in our lives, it's not our fault. Our body is misunderstanding that we're in danger and is making us become people who are reactive, impatient, can be anxious, destructive to ourselves, to others. I had an eating disorder for 20 years. Do you know how much it hurt my body? But I had sworn as a kid that I would never hurt others the way I had been hurt. Guess what? I turned it to myself instead. We can develop food eating issues. We can develop substance issues. At work, we can become either disengaged or reactive all the time. We can lose hope, optimism in our relationships. Look at what happened to me. I was a red zone human being for about 10 years with my husband. And now this is an interesting point to share. You said stress affects us everywhere. What I have seen for many of us, unless we're really in the red zone all the time, we have pockets where we're stressful. I was a red zone human being with my husband, the poor guy, but I was Miss Green Zone at work and with my friends and with my kids. I was a really good mom because I had been so neglected and abused as a kid that I was like not going to do that. As listeners, as you listen, really look at, is your whole life kind of overall a red zone life or maybe yellow zone, or do you have places specifically? And then the consequences of that are then specific to each of those life areas. In my course, we work on each of these life areas specifically after we learn the methodology.
Yeah, I see how that could be really helpful. And you're right. I think we often turn this onto ourselves with all sorts of different ways to punish ourselves. But on the outside, we look fine, we function, we take care of the kids, we work, we get things done because we just need to keep up these appearances on the outside. While on the inside, we are really slowly dying from this disconnect that we are feeling. This is a really important thing that you touched on. And I'm guessing for women, this becomes a bit more apparent as well, because we often have to wear so many hats and be so many things to so many people that I feel this affects women sometimes maybe disproportionately more than men. But again, don't quote me on this. I don't have any studies in the back of my head for that, but that is a feeling I get when I look at the people that I've worked with as well, and the majority of them are women. I wonder if there's something to it as well, that being female, it's more difficult for us.
And again, I'm not a scientist either, so this is just a hypothesis I've got from the research I've done. Men do best with adrenaline. Adrenaline is a good hormone for them that makes them work, that makes them do. Women were not supposed to be driven by adrenaline. It's oxytocin that should be our primary, which is the hormone of connection. And so we live in a society where adrenaline is what we're supposed to use for work, for parenting, the 25,000, what do you call that, things that our children have to do in the afternoon, plus the homework. I think it's one of the main reasons women burn out faster is because we're using the wrong fuel in order to lead our life. And so that's why learning to be kind of like, what is being a green zone human being as a woman and what's green zone as a man might even be different. I've actually never even thought about that. This is actually the first time I think about it, which I love because now I'm going to go into a crazy rabbit hole research about this. But we're different, men and women, and we experience stress differently. Men, when they go into the stress response, first of all, it takes them longer to get out of it. And usually going the cave thing, like John Gray, women are from Mars. They need time alone. They need time to resettle. Women, we need connection. I literally have pursued my husband in the bathroom because I'm like, I need you to co-regulate with me because I needed him while he needed space. And we've learned over time where he'll say, honey, give me 15 minutes. I'm in the red zone and I have to learn to manage my system. But now I know that he'll be back and I'll be able to finish my regulation with him, which is what works best for me.
That's really interesting that you say that. I heard that from a few women, and I know that from myself too, until I really, as you said, that awareness came in that said, okay, maybe some space would be good so that each person can follow their own way of settling back in. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have a feeling some of our listeners will recognize that from their own lives as well. And I am wondering a little bit about going back to that you said we can use this traffic light system and your methodology to spend as much time in the green zone as we can as human beings. For a lot of us, we have come to a point often in our lives where we are so deep in these stress responses and our nervous system is so dysregulated that, as you said, it takes us a really long time to be able to come into the green zone, and often a lot of energy, even physical energy, to the point where a lot of us actually end up getting physically ill in one way or another because of that. Can we use your methodology as an ongoing tool, or is there something that you recommend when somebody first starts working with your methodology and they're really deep in this hole to come out of that and then use your tool as maintenance? How do you recommend we go about that?
Yeah, I've had people in my courses be at a one, at a two, and it's the only request I have of people is just to use it as often as possible. Now, the work can be used in two ways, the steps. One is the in the moment, right? In the moment, as often as you can, stop. Let me take a few breaths. Okay, what can I do? Just by one point. I don't expect people to shift from red to green, especially at the beginning. Now, the more we do this work, I can shift from red to green like that now because I've developed neural pathways to get me there. But number one, to people, even if you shift one point on the scale, that's extraordinary. That's number one. Practice it all the time. Shift one point over time, your baseline level is going to change about where you primarily reside. The other piece I teach is foundational habits. And those are habits that teach us foundationally to start teaching our nervous system okay. That can be meditation, that can be yoga, that can be taking time in nature, that can be therapy, right? But you don't have to do that separately. You don't have to do that first. It's you do it together. And foundational and then practicing in the moment again and again. They are days I do the work 20 times. And what's incredible is what starts happening, Petra, is that as you change, I call it your homeostatic level, where you reside on the scale most of the time, becomes the point where, for me, I can't be in the red zone for more than a couple of minutes. My nervous system can't stand it. It used to be that I'd be like, I'm in the red zone, I've got to do this work and I've got to shift out of it. And it was so hard. And now it's like, oh, yeah. To fight with my husband is so uninteresting to my nervous system. I was addicted to it before because that's what I grew up with. You can get to the point where your new status quo is the green zone, but it takes time and it takes discipline and commitment, but it's worth every ounce of your energy to practice it. I've changed from a 2 to a 10. I would say 9, 10. No, I'm not a 10 all the time.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it's interesting that you say that because I feel when we grow up with trauma or we have lived through a lot of trauma or chronic stress or even injuries and illnesses, our nervous system becomes familiar with a certain level of, I want to say, chaos or uncertainty and a certain level of just feeling uncomfortable. It becomes that familiarity and we crave it because that's the space that we feel safe in. That's what we know. And when things all of a sudden start to shift and we start to feel better, our nervous system goes, no, this is not safe. I need this chaos back. I need these people back that abuse me because that's what I know and that's where I feel safe. I feel like this addiction sometimes to being in that red zone, it's also in itself almost a stress response or a trauma response that we need to start working with. And as you said, build these new neural pathways and reteach our nervous system that there are different responses that are also safe for us to live in. Beautifully put. And just, yeah, triggered that realization for me that sometimes we are familiar in the chaos, in that pain, because that's what we
Science is
know.
actually saying we are addicted, that there's an actual addiction component. You use that word. It is. It's actually really uncomfortable to actually start feeling happier. When I first started this work, I thought that what people were most scared about was to be in the red zone, to suffer. Actually, what people struggle with the most is to be happy. It's actually a muscle we have to develop. Like you said, we have to rewire our nervous system. Now, this is really an important piece. Remember that it's not your fault. It's not your fault, right? It's not our fault that we're addicted to stress. Number one, because evolutionarily, as you probably, your limbic brain is still wired to think we are living in people time. We are wired to still be in the stress response as often as possible. To actually relax and not be on the lookout for danger feels really dangerous to our limbic brain. And it hasn't evolved enough for modern times. That's number one. And then number two, growing up with what we grew up with, if we have trauma, it's also not safe for us to feel relaxed because we have to be on the lookout for potential danger because that's how we got gotten as children. Trauma was never something I really want to say to people. Yeah, it's really normal if you are addicted to living in the red zone. And it's one of the reasons I do this work is I want to remind people that they don't have to stay there and hopefully that they don't wait till crisis in order to start changing them. You have to rely on faith. Rely on faith that what I'm telling you and that what you're telling your listeners is true, and I'm really a walking, a living example of that because if you had seen me a few years ago in a fight with Brian, you would have been like, this is not the same woman. And if you had seen me in my relationship with food, you would have thought it's not the same woman. It's just incredible. And it's the same person, right? It's just you and I in the red zone or you and I in the green zone. I am a completely different human being in each.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And before we wrap up today, as well, you mentioned that you're also branching out into bringing this work that you're doing into organizations and into businesses. What inspired you to do that? And what's the importance of actually bringing this work into our workplaces as well?
I live my life guided by a greater force than me. I call that God's source spirit. I don't really have an attachment to what it's called. And literally, that's what I listened to. A few years ago, about 5 years ago, I had a very strong intuition to bring it to businesses. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've never worked in corporate. I've always been an entrepreneur. And it took me a long time. So I built a whole course for organization and I started working with companies. And it was incredible, the success, which I didn't know is it going to work in organizations. And what I found was not only the transformation was incredible in at work, but every single person brought the work home, as opposed to teaching it to consumers and they would bring it to at home and then try to find a way to bring it to work. Work would change, right? People would start using the language. Hey, are you in the red zone? They would start doing these drop-ins where you check in with yourself before starting a meeting. Hey, what zone are you in? And then they also brought it home. And I realized that I have the greatest chance to create larger impact with this work, actually working with organization versus working with individuals or small courses. And what I'm really working with right now, who I'm working with, are what I call people-centric organizations. And those are organizations that know that the well-being of their people has to come, if not first before profit, at least alongside profit. And I just work with mind, body. It's just been incredible. And yeah, to have them change in both areas of their life when, they spend, what is it, like 70% of their time in the workplace, it is incredible. And then to have a whole common language that everybody's doing it is the other incredible piece.
Yeah, I actually never thought about it that way, but that's fascinating that, yes, if we bring that into the workplace, it will inevitably come home with us, where then we can also teach it to spouses, partners, children, our families, siblings, parents, and actually use that in our personal life as well. Yeah, that's a wonderful development. I'm very glad to hear that you're bringing that into the workplace. There were many corporate workplaces that I was part of that the piece that contributed to my burnout was definitely the culture in which we had to work in. I'm very glad to hear that some of these things are changing and that workplaces are opening up more to what you are teaching and what you're offering. If our listeners are curious, and like you said, I don't think there's a listener on here that would ever tell us they've never been stressed. If they are, I would love to hear from them and hear their secret. But if you have felt stress in your life and you're curious maybe about working with Isabelle or finding out more, how can people get in touch with you, Isabella, and what kind of programs and services do you offer?
Yeah, thank you. And those people who might say they're not stressed anymore, they've probably learned how to regulate their nervous system. And again, Joe Dispenza says again and again, people always think he doesn't go into stress. And I just heard it again. I was listening to another podcast. He says, what are you talking about? I go into stress all the time. The only difference is, do I recognize that I'm in it and how fast can I get out of it? That's what this methodology does. Helps you recognize and then get out of it. That's it. It's more like, am I regulated? I think the question is more, am I regulated? Am I resilient versus am I experiencing any stress? That should never be your ideal scenario, right? Go to thestressreset.co is my website for organizations, thestressreset.co. And then what I love to do as well is work one-on-one with people. What I've seen one-on-one, because they get my full attention for a 3-month program, is people will change, no joke, at least 4 points to 5 points on that stress reset scale in weeks. And I work primarily with women who are either chronically stressed or burnout. Many of them are leaders, and they literally become completely different human beings in just 8 to 12 weeks. If you want to work with me, please reach out to me, Isabelle. And you know what? Right now, I don't remember. I can't believe it. I don't remember if it's thestressreset.co. We just really updated the website. I think you'll have it. It's either the stress reset, I think it's stressreset.co. And please reach out to me if you want to find out more about how to work with you one-on-one, or if you want to have me talk to your organization, because I would love to bring that work in people, as many organizations as possible. I have this dream of having a green zone certification for the business world, that if you want to apply for a job at that company, you will know, oh, they did that work. I want to work for them. That's one of my dreams, my visions.
I love that. And I really hope we can support everything that you're doing through this podcast by getting the word out, getting people more aware of chronic stress and also what happens in their own workplace. What a wonderful mission. And yes, we will be linking to all of Isabelle's offerings in the show notes as well. Be sure to check there for the link to her website and connect with her. Isabelle, are you on the socials as well? I think we'll probably be linking to your socials as well.
Isabelle Tierney on LinkedIn. I'm really getting away from Facebook and
Yeah.
really spending most of my time on LinkedIn. Yes.
Perfect. We'll make sure we connect you up with our listeners there. And listeners, again, if you are experiencing stress and you're not finding a way to regulate, or you're experiencing a lot of repercussions of chronic stress illnesses, or you're not feeling well, or you're not feeling like yourself, this is a great step in regulating, building resilience, building more capacity, and in essence, as you said, recovering from all these experiences that are tied to chronic stress. So important in today's world. I feel we have a lot to deal with. We have a lot on our plates these days. Taking care of ourselves shouldn't really be some kind of afterthought or oh wow, the bottom fell out, now I need to do something quick to fix it, but really an ongoing thing that we do for ourselves every day so that we can stay in that green zone that Isabelle mentioned, and we can actually feel like the true human beings that we are supposed to be in our best selves. Thank you, Isabelle, for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your methodology. I truly appreciate it. And I feel so much value in what you shared and so many ways that we can apply that in our lives. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and sharing that with our listeners and myself.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so fun to do this with you because you know so much. It was just really fun to build with you because you and I, we committed we were going to dance with each other and we did it. It's really becoming the best version of yourself or your optimal self or whatever it is. Don't wait for crisis. There's a way. You don't have to live in the yellow zone or the red zone. There's a way to live. That's a life that most of us really want, but don't know how to get. That's really available easily, simply. We don't say easily, but simply available if you practice this work. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll leave our listeners with these beautiful words. And thank you, Isabelle. And take really good care of yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.